blessings you've provided to our nation over the years. I thank you for the opportunity to live in this great state with so many things we love, and the opportunity to reside in this wonderful community with so many like-minded families and neighbors who are committed to excellence and have demonstrated that in the way that they care about the school district, the way that they donate their time, their talents, and their treasures towards making this district excellent and great for the kids who come through our doors every day. Lord, I pray for wisdom for those of us up here who are in a position of leadership over this organization that affects so many families. I pray that we will always keep track that our first and foremost priority is to represent the interests of those kids well, so they can be prepared to enter life and be contributing members of society and excel in the pursuits they follow. I pray that we would be great caretakers for the community's trust and their fiduciary and their financial resources as we consider how to use those resources in a way to maximize the purpose of this organization. I pray that we would be open-minded and considerate and thoughtful in how we govern this organization, and I thank you for just all the many ways you've blessed us and equipped us. I ask all these things in your name. Amen. Now if you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. And also, if you'll join me for the Texas Pledge.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
The floor will now open for public comment. Members of the public who completed the citizen comment card can speak at this time. When I call your name, please step up to the podium and state your name and address. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Comments pertaining to individual personnel or individual student problems are not permitted. Pursuant to the HPISD board operating guidelines, patrons may not delegate or designate their minutes to another person in attendance. Please recognize that under the Texas Open Meetings Act, the board may not act at this meeting on a matter that's not listed in the public notice for this meeting. As this is a school board meeting that is often attended by students, we respectfully request that there be no inappropriate comments, no cheering, and no jeering. We want everyone to feel comfortable addressing the board, and we want for nobody to feel intimidated if they have a different opinion from those in the audience. I would like to point out that as passed at a recent board meeting, we will take public comments until the later of 15 minutes, the earlier of 15 minutes, or when all of these comments are completed. So if you are on the fence about providing a comment card, please do bring it up or hand it to Roxanne as quickly as possible. I recognize that's a little different than how we've done things in previous years, but it's consistent with what was passed by the board. So with that, our first speaker is Louisa Harwood. For the benefit of the audience, will you make sure that green button, you push the button and it's showing green there?
Oh.
That way everybody will hear you. On the microphone. Oh.
Hi, my name is Louisa Harwood. I live at 3524 Hanover. I do not have children in the district. And as sort of our children start to grow older and enter school age, I've started to do my homework, and Highland Park is not, it's not, y'all say you're committed to academic excellence, and I'm just not seeing it. This is just over the course of the last 9 years. The school rankings, we've been downgraded from gold status to silver status. We've dropped 151 positions in 9 years. And that's really pretty scary. I'm gonna share that with everyone. And I just kind of want to ask what's going on. You've dropped 151 positions. You have, our elementary enrollment has dropped significantly, 50% 15% in 7 years. Our star reading has dropped 15%, and I'll read something here. This is another chart I've got, that third graders aren't meeting the grade level standards, and they've fallen significantly since 2015. That doesn't sound like excellence to me. I've learned that the Lucy Calkins reading and writing curriculum that you all adopted in 2019, it seems to me like it's dumbing children down. I have the 8th grade critical reading list, and 13 of the 15 books are below grade level. Some of these are for 5th and 6th graders, 3rd and 7th graders. That's not committing to excellence. I've also noticed there's lots of controversial content that sort of takes away time from traditional education, and again, sort of dumbing our kids down. These brain pop, all this technology and video and cartoons are sort of subtle and sinister and just introducing divisive ideologies, and again, taking away time from traditional learning. Character Strong, your SEL program, why didn't y'all just create your own? Why have Character Strong, who the CEO of Character Strong said that they use SEL as a weapon for social justice. She said that Character Strong helps students move from anger to agency and then to action, primarily in the cause of anti-racism. This is the woman who created the SEL program that is in our schools today. So you can't say that critical race theory and things like that aren't in our
Ms. Harwood,
school.
thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Robert Baldwin.
I am Robert Baldwin, 4233 Amherst. I'm here as an individual taxpayer and not as a member of any parent group. I hope the board read this, and if you did, shame on you if you agreed with this information. This is the pamphlet that was sent out in the email about the penny increase. Teachers deserve more pay. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. But taxpayers do deserve honesty and accountability, and not a bunch of inaccurate marketing. You say that recaptures compel HPISD to do more than less. Absolutely not true. Recapture has nothing to do with the amount per student that we receive from the state. The reason ours is less is simply demographics. It has nothing to do with the property taxes we pay. Districts are reimbursed for services they provide. If we don't provide the services, we're not reimbursed for those costs. These are early education allotment, high quality pre-K, dyslexia, bilingual education, increases for student education, additional instructional days that some districts provide, educationally disadvantaged kids, free and reduced price lunches. These are things that we don't provide in most cases, so we don't get reversed for those. In Region 10 alone, there are 22.64 kids taking English as a second language. 46.2 are identified at risk. 55.28 are economically disadvantaged. That's why they get more money. We do less funding. HPISD is unable to do competitive pay. HB3 increased the the total allotment from 5140 to 6160. 30% of the districts should have used that for budget for increases. Enrollment has declined every year except one since 2024-2025. There's been a net loss of 400 students, which is $2.464 million per year. Our problem with paying teachers is a budget issue. It's not an education funding issue. district passed the last bonding package. They promised us that the majority of school operating costs related to personnel and classroom instruction, which increase and decrease in proportion with the number of students and are reimbursed by the state based on average daily attendance. Over time, as the student population grows, additional per student funding will allow the district to absorb a significant portion of the operating costs. Enrollment has declined, not increased, how we were sold. And that's the reason we can't pay our teachers. And our administrators get paid, top 2 in the district.
Our next speaker is Austin Hopper.
Austin Hopper, 3816 Miramar, Highland Park. I see concerning things in our district. I see a precipitous drop in our high school's national rank and an implosion in elementary enrollment. I see unwise spending on unneeded elementary school and on Orwellian instruction coaches. I see a board seeking the quick fix of higher taxes rather than careful examination and much needed fundamental change. Tonight I wanted to begin a dialogue on free speech. Did you know that parents across our country are increasingly outraged by the radical curriculum being imposed in the classroom and are starting to speak out at school board meetings? Did you know that our government is attempting to silence those parents? Did you know that Attorney General Merrick Garland has directed the FBI and U.S. Attorney's offices to investigate these parents? Concerned parents, shockingly today, are maligned as domestic terrorists committing hate crimes. Well, I'm sorry to report free speech is also under attack right here at Highland Park. At our last board meeting, after discussion about Matthew Stafford and Clayton Kershaw, our superintendent snuck in the bad news. At minute 54, you can watch this on YouTube, you can see Tom Trigg commending our board for broadly expanding the definition of disruptive behavior at board meetings. So you, as a tax-paying citizen of HP, can no longer say or do much of anything during a board meeting other than the 1, 2, 3 minutes you're recognized to speak. If you boo, Tom Sharp, board president, can have you thrown out by police. If you cheer, Tom Sharp can have you thrown out by the police. If you applaud, Tom Sharp can have you thrown out by the police. For any audible expression whatsoever, approval or disapproval of any speech, you guessed it, Tom Sharp can have you thrown out by the police. Tom Trigg ended that portion of his comments by saying something like, "We are just trying to treat everyone with respect." I'm a 20-year resident of Highland Park. My wife grew up here and went to HP. I own a home and pay property taxes. I vote. I have kids in the district. I help pay for the very building I am standing in right now. And I'm told by our superintendent that I will be silenced under threat of physical removal by law enforcement as a sign of respect. Why does our board so insist on limiting our right to free speech? What reality are we living in? This new disruption policy denies my fundamental right to free speech. This policy should be eliminated immediately.
Our next speaker is Leo Whalen.
How are y'all doing this evening? Good. It's good to see everybody's smiling face for once. This is a mannequin. It's a teaching tool for doctors, lifeguards. It's just a mannequin, but I'll come to that later. My name is Leo Whalen. I live at 2905 Fonder Drive. I have 5 grandchildren that attend HP schools. Yesterday was a horrible day for the United States of America. Superman, the Man of Steel, is now a gay joke by DC Comics. They made him gay, and they didn't didn't just create another character and just call him the super gay guy. They decided to make Superman gay. And they did it for one reason. They wanted to tear down an institution, which is exactly what the liberal left is doing with everything in the United States right now. They're moving to communism, and they're moving to destroy institutions. Penn State University is developing a program to reimagine kindergarten through 12th grade through a lens of social justice and racial equality, or equity, equity. And this is the same Penn State that protected a child rapist and pedophile for 30 years. Everyone in the administration, everyone in the sports department, everybody knew about Jerry Sandusky, and they protected him for 30 years. And this is a school that's going to develop a program to transition kindergarten through 12th grade by reimagining how kids are educated. It's unbelievable. Loudoun County School District in Virginia is another out-of-control school district that is on the verge of destroying the institution of education. Board members in Loudoun have advocated hacking parents' emails and their websites in order to destroy their ability to communicate. They allow boys to use female restrooms, and a boy raped a girl in a bathroom during classes at Loudoun County. The school board tried to cover up the assault and had the father arrested at a school board meeting. And you know how Loudoun got so out of control? They had zero board oversight. Years of boards completely run and dominated by liberal voices are now on the verge of acting like communists. I've talked with you in the past about the complete exclusion of conservative voices from the boards that help shape policy at Highland Park. First, you have the Sounding Board for Inclusive and Respectful Schools, and it's completely dominated by liberals. To my knowledge, there probably aren't any conservative voices on that board. Then you have the chance with the Pandemic Committee. Instead of choosing just one doctor that was a conservative voice, for the last slide, you went with a person who is completely in favor of masks. They're dedicated to BLM, Black Lives Matter. And they wonder on social media what would happen. Holy cow. I'm not near done, but I'll end there. I just think that we need some conservative oversight on the boards that we don't have. If we don't, we're going to get out of control.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
The liberal direction we're going.
Our next speaker is Mr. Alan Toole.
I'm Alan Toole, 4421 McFarland Boulevard. I went to HPISD from K through 9th grade. My family moved away. I moved back about 11 years ago to escape California and come back to freedom-loving Texas. At least that's what I thought. So I sent all of you an email today about our rights as Americans. And Tom, you're often quoting that at the beginning of your meetings. So in my email, I said I was hoping that you could do two things. Number one, redraft your disruption policy to have more narrow and clearly defined definition of what classifies a disruption. And number two, follow the lead of the Louisiana School Boards Association by formally denouncing the actions of the National School Boards Association. I'm surprised at the broad nature of definition of what constitutes a disruption. The policy states that applause is a disruption, and as such, one can be removed from the meeting after one warning by law enforcement. That would be a direct infringement of the First and 14th Amendment rights. Applause after someone gives a speech during a public comment period is a form of symbolic speech and is a natural, reflexive human tendency. There are many people that attend these meetings that are unable to deliver their thoughts during the public comment period, but they want to show their support and agreement with those that do. Squelching that speech, whether it be positive or negative, is unacceptable. Sometimes issues are highly controversial, and when parents feel they are coming to the defense of their most precious assets, their children, the debate can generate a lot of audience participation. That type of energetic discussion is what this country is founded on, and it is important that the HPISD board to hear it unimpeded. The government may not silence legal speech in any form, even if it criticizes government officials or employees or their favorite ideas or initiatives, even if that speech does so in ways that many people find unpleasant. Allegations of hurt feelings do not justify censorship of public speech. The current attack on our First Amendment rights is widespread and unprecedented. On September 29th, the National School Boards Association called for federal enforcement to deal with the growing number of threats of violence and acts of intimidation occurring across the nation, without citing any actual violence against a school board or any evidence of a rise in criminal conduct against school officials. The NSBA wants to classify the action of parents attending public meetings as domestic terrorism and hate crimes. Within days of receiving the letter, the Biden administration, Department of Justice, and FBI obediently responded. A former spokesman of the DOJ said, for the Attorney General to put a memo with such chilling effect on the First Amendment rights of parents who are just fighting for their kids' education is absolutely insane. The Louisiana School Board Association quickly issued a response last week stating the LSBA does not agree with the NSBA's action. The description of events is not universal occurrence in all school boards. It fails to align with the blah, 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 blah. But so anyway, you get my point. The Louisiana School Board has given you a path. Publicly, please denounce what the National School Board has done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toole. Our next speaker is Amy Urista.
My name is Amy Urista. I have a second grader that we actually pulled from UP over the summer and moved to a private school that teaches classical Christian education. So we moved here about 8 years ago. I would go on runs through the neighborhood. I'm a big runner, and I would see, throughout Park Cities, a couple of private school signs. I always thought, why, you live in Park Cities, why are people going to private schools? And now I understand why. So I have family now. We get going to a new private school. Schools are now in the business of shaping children, shaping what they know, shaping what they think, shaping what they believe, shaping what they learn to love, shaping who your child will become. So where you send your child to school for 6 hours, 5 days a week does make a difference. I've seen firsthand my second grader grow tremendously at his new school. He went passing a math assessment of double digits, which he never did at UP. Passed that and then went to triple digits. So he went from middle of September to the end of September going to triple digits, carrying. He'd never done carrying. Now he's in subtracting, having to borrow. Never knew the concept. And now he's mastered actually that concept just in a matter of a month, which is huge. So I've got 2 test assessments. I'm super excited for him, and just seeing him be excited and the confidence that he's been able to see in himself has been I'm just grateful for that opportunity. Math at HP, I've noticed last year, I didn't understand any of it. I can't understand it. I don't understand how my child is expected to understand it. I do know that the instructional materials have SEL programs all from pre-K to 12K based on a philosophy to feel good, so I'm understanding why my son didn't know how to add or didn't master any math facts. All about materials embedded, all this academic, social, emotional learning embedded in our curriculum, just promoting this, let's all get along, let's be equal. Classical education, basically teaching my child how to think, not this government education what to think. And I use math as an example because young kids have these brains, they're sponges. They can fill their minds with incredible amount of content, math facts that will stay with them for the rest of their lives that my son did not get last year. They're committing these facts to memory. It's super important. I don't know why we're trying to do something different with it. It doesn't make any sense to me. HPISD, I've noticed just in the past year, has shifted its focus from teaching students how to think to teaching them really how to get along in this industry. Educate workers, not thinkers. Workers have to get along. And that's what we're now calling social emotional learning. These morals or character traits. Good has become relative. It drifts over time. These lines of wrong and right are blurring. Truth depends on the philosophy of the teacher, the principal, Superintendent Trigg, whatever your philosophy is, TDA Commissioner Mike Morath. I mean, I can go on. And PTA, you guys have to really help us out because y'all are contributing to wherever y'all are. All this destruction of our children as well. So I just want to point out too, like I have a book, this is a textbook, government, or not government,
Mr. Reese,
yes, textbook.
I'm sorry, you're beyond your time.
Okay, well, textbook,
Thank you.
second grader, which never had.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So our last speaker is Sue Burke.
I'm Sue Burke. I have a child in the middle school and one in the high school. We live at 3635 Mockingbird. I'm going to read fast because I have a lot to cover. I'd like to know how you pick and choose which events will be virtual and which ones will be divided into 2 sections and which ones will be totally in person. It seems very random to me how you decided all this, and I'd like it to stop. Recently, you decided that curriculum nights for all the schools should be virtual. Because of this, I missed seeing my daughter cheer at her game. This was for the middle school for my son. I sat at my computer for 45 minutes refreshing my screen, trying desperately to connect to no avail. A day or so later, Skip Moran sent out a link to watch curriculum night. Again, I tried and tried, it did not work. A couple of weeks later, because I'm really busy building houses, I reached out to Skip and told him it did not work. He sent me another link. This one doesn't work either. I click on it, it goes round and round and never starts. For the high school curriculum night, it was a little better, but not much. I had to log in using my daughter's Google account. This was cumbersome because my computer kept switching back to my account, so I missed some of it. For her 4 classes, it worked, but for the other 2, they sent a link attached to a document, so it did not work. For one of the teachers, I was able to get a copy from the next day. For the other one, I never got a link. On to the dances. First, you canceled the Howdy Dance, which would have occurred right after a football game in a packed stadium. Then you divided the highlights dance into 2 sections. I paid $65 so my daughter and her date could attend, but for some reason the bus driver had some kind of delay. By the time she got there, it was extremely late and they were turning the lights on already. So I would like to know, so she totally missed the whole dance. I'd like to know who's going to refund my $65. If it had been as originally planned, this wouldn't have happened. On to the PTO meetings. I noticed that all of them were in person. You heavily advertised promoting the Golden Pennies initiative. Is it okay to have meetings in person when you're asking for money, but not for the kids to congregate even though they're in school together all day long? This is political theater meant to punish us and the kids in some way. I'd like to ask you to stop this. Make homecoming one dance section. Obama's birthday party was not divided into 2 sections. Why should our kids' dances be? Especially after a football game where they're all crowded together or in the hallways. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the workshop method of teaching. My daughter was in a geometry class with a teacher who used this method. So many of the kids were failing in class, more than half of them transferred out. I spoke to my daughter's assistant principal and he insisted that the teacher was a great teacher, even though 15 kids transferred out of the class. Why are our kids expected to teach themselves anything? I'd like a list of the teachers who will be using this method so my child is never in one of these classes again. Even better, don't use it. We pay exorbitant taxes to live in this area, and I don't expect my kids to have to teach themselves now. Thank you.
All right, I will move on to the next order of business. We have student recognitions. Dr. Trigg.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome. Student recognitions are always one of the favorite parts of our monthly board meetings, and we're delighted to be able to present the first of the 21-22 school year tonight. So we will be honoring one of our student artists. She's currently a 7th grader at Highland Park Middle School. So Principal Dr. Chris Miller, would you come forward to make the presentation?
Good evening, board. Every year, Dr. Trigg sends a personal signed birthday card to every one of his HPISD 800 plus employees. Staff members often tell us how much it means to them to get such a beautiful personal message in the mail. In this summer's contest, art contest, the communications department received many terrific entries from the students from grades K through 12, and picking a winner wasn't easy. They kept coming back to Mary Claire Richardson's colored pencil and marker piece, and in the end, they unanimously agreed that she was the winner. Mary Claire, we have a certificate for you and several copies of the card and a framed copy of your artwork. We hope you will continue to nurture your artistic gift. Congratulations. Please stop in the hallway. We'll get a picture, and let's get one more round of applause for Mary Claire.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for raising such a wonderful daughter. Appreciate it.
We'll move now to board announcements and committee reports. We can start off with the Pandemic Response Committee. Jay and Bryce, if y'all want to draw
Okay,
straws.
sure. I think Bryce will probably join in as well. There's not a whole lot to report except mostly good news. As everybody knows, the number of positive cases is way down and has continued to decrease week by week. We're very thankful for the leadership of Dr. Trigg, of the members of this committee, of the members of the board, especially of the staff and the parents and community. It's been a very cooperative effort that has had great results. We are optimistic that we'll continue to see the same trend because the results are going in the direction that we had hoped for. We have not had a pandemic response committee meeting since our last school board meeting. The numbers are on the screen. I believe those are the positive cases, week 2 through week 8, and you can see the trend.
Just since there's not a legend, I believe that's students and staff. The staff are the darker blue and the students are lighter blue, right?
That's correct, yes. I guess I ought to say, in addition, the way the district has been making decisions about pandemic response is the advice of the Pandemic Response Committee with ultimately decisions by the superintendent. I think the superintendent deserves a lot of thanks for his leadership. I think we've had great success. I also want to thank the specialists on our committee for their continued work. The lead nurse for the district is Taryn Zebarth, and she's been fantastic, and so is her entire staff of nurses at each campus. The 2 doctors on the committee have not been on for the entire time, but they've been very helpful as well. Dr. Tanner Roberts and Dr. Julie Trevetti, and I bet Bryce has more information to contribute, but before I hand it over to Bryce, I will say we continue to be nimble and flexible and able to make change as we see good and hopefully not bad trends, and as a result, the Pandemic Response Committee still exists and will continue to monitor, but as I mentioned before, the trends are great, and we've been fortunate not to have any terrible or tragic cases, although we've had a lot of students and teachers who stayed home, and we've had a few classrooms that had to shut down, but currently we don't have any. Bryce, did you want to add?
Yeah, I'll just say the graph obviously reflects positive trends, but I think that it's slightly deceptive because John shared today that I think we have 9 total student cases in the entire district of 6,800 students. So I think the news is even more positive than the graph necessarily reflects. We've had, we get daily reports on the number of cases and had a number of days where there's been 0 cases or 1 case. So I think the news is really encouraging, and this is all in light of the fact that we have students and families, the majority of whom have opted not to wear masks. So I'm encouraged. I hope I don't even have to attend another Pandemic Response Committee meeting. That would be great. So I hope it stays this way the rest of the year.
Something to celebrate, because obviously what a difference a couple of months makes, doesn't it? I will say with confidence, I think I've definitely attended my last PRC meeting, and I hope you have as well. And I will address one thing that maybe just for the benefit of the rest of the board, I think there, as Jay alluded to, the district has made a decision on a few different cases to close down a classroom either for the remainder of a week or maybe spilling into the following week, and that's really made on a case-by-case basis, examining what positive cases are in the classroom, where those kids are situated. For instance, if there's 3 cases and the kids all sit together, that's less likely to result in a decision to quarantine or to go to, what's the term now, remote conferencing for that class. But if, for instance, on the alternative, there's 4 kids and they're at 4 different tables, and so there's a greater concern that maybe they're spreading it further, that's when there's been a decision made to close the class. And then they've sort of looked at when were the cases, when are the weekends. We had one around the 3-day weekend. So a lot goes into that, and so it's not a one-size-fits-all decision process. It's really hey, let's analyze what's going on in that classroom. And often the teacher has an indication for, hey, I think I have reason to believe these kids play together, and so it's a different situation than this where it might be in the classroom. And then, I know the other thing that I think has been communicated, but maybe sometimes it doesn't always get out to all channels, is there have been some decisions made at other campuses, whether it's curriculum night or dances, and just to share my, Dr. you can elaborate, but that's also been made on a case-by-case basis, trying to make decision enough time ahead of an event for people to plan accordingly and take into account all the information available at the time. So I just wanted to, those are a couple other pieces of information that would be helpful to the rest of the board. Anything to add to that?
The only thing I would add is I'm going to mention one more person, and that's Brenda West. Brenda really is the boots on the ground person that day to day is working through all these issues, helping with our nurses, helping with testing our staff, and really has taken on this additional assignment in accordance with what she usually does with HR. So Brenda, we're all very, very appreciative of you and the time and energy it takes to, and I know you're breathing a little easier with these numbers the way they are. So
yeah, thank you. I'll move on to the Finance Committee. I'll let maybe Edward kick it off.
Yeah, I'll kick off. Yeah, I mean, the Finance Committee has been heavily involved in trying to compile the right information for the VATRE, the voter-approved tax ratification election that's going to happen on November 2nd. So there's been a big initiative on behalf of the administration in particular to be compiling all the factual information that is required for the public to make a factual-based vote. And the great news is on our website, I think it's very user-friendly. Right on the front bottom section is a button that takes you right to VATRE and Golden Pennies. And it really does a very thorough job of outlining the issues. What is the issue, the description behind the issue, what are the use of proceeds, which in this case is 100% compensation for staff and teachers, impact of taxes to people, and a description about the regular, House Bill 3 and use of, and what the Golden Pennies really are. So I think it's a very helpful resource for the public. We also have included an FAQ, frequently asked questions component here, which is a byproduct of some of the questions we're getting on kind of a daily basis, and I think that'll be very helpful to all of us and the public as we continue forward to November 2nd. Mary Jane, would you add anything to that? We're going to talk a little bit about the FAQ, I think, a little bit later in this.
Yeah, we thought it might be helpful for the other trustees to push it. So let's move beyond the committee reports, and then we'll have a consent agenda, and then we can stuff it out. Sorry, I know it's a little confusing. Ed Services, Stacy and Bryce.
go ahead.
Not a whole lot to report. The primary thing that I think is important is that House Bill 4545 was the House bill that basically mandated for students that had failed the STAR that they required 30 hours of counseling in groups no greater than 3. The materials were published this last week, and our staff has selected the materials that have to be selected off of a published list by the state. The other thing is that there's mandatory training that has to happen, and we are using a train-the-trainer approach, and that has primarily been because Region 10, who's doing the training, offer those classes primarily during daytime hours, and we did not want to remove our teachers from the classroom in instructional setting. So as we all know, there's a stipend that will be given to our teachers that have decided to be the tutors for the state mandated program, and for learning the program and learning about the training associated with the program, they'll be paid about 3 hours on top of what they're being paid. And that's so that way they could do it on their own pace, and we do have a group of teachers and administrators that will be training the trainers if there's questions that come up. I think when I last spoke with Lisa, you said probably 2 weeks before that would get implemented. And just as a reminder to everybody on the board, it's whatever subjects they failed. So if the students, unfortunately did not pass math and English, then there would be a total of 60 hours. And they've had to implement the program, determine how the program will work, identify, because we did have a number of students that didn't take the STAR, and we still had to come up with a way to ensure that we had identified students that did not take the STAR this last year. So that should be rolling out shortly, and there'll be more information coming to the parents of students
Stacy, do we have a rough number of how many students do fall in that category?
I'm gonna let Lisa answer that question primarily because when you look at it, you know, N equals a subject for this, so to speak, but that doesn't mean N equals the number of students. And I think across the district,
And we've only been looking at it in the number of the 30-hour segment, so we have about 500, but that doesn't mean that's 500 unique students. And I might add, we were so fortunate that our staff stepped up to the plate and were willing to be the tutors for our students. There are a lot of districts we're hearing about who have so many students to cover that they're hiring virtual tutors from around the state and all those kinds of things. So we are so pleased that our staff stepped up and that we had very manageable numbers to cover.
so we will be able to get at that number once we get through and see the exact numbers.
And Stacy, just to clarify, you pointed out something that I'd forgotten, I'd heard at a previous meeting, but for students who opted not to take the STAR, we're compelled by the state, I'm going to state this as a statement, it's really a question. Is it accurate that we're compelled by the state to come up with another mechanism to determine effectively something to replace the STAR test for purposes of this required
Yes.
tutoring? Okay.
A lot of times we'll have something already built in. We had to get creative in a few subject areas and a few things, but we've worked with our administrators to determine those students who needed that tutoring.
Thank you.
I think that was the only thing I had in that. Do you have anything to add, Bryce?
Just really quickly, I've gotten some questions from parents and community members about our early literacy instructional materials, about the math framework, about grammar, and I'm discussing those with Lisa just to develop a better understanding and educate myself on where the district stands on those issues, and those conversations are ongoing.
Great, and thank you, I've been part of those too, so more to follow on those.
I'll move on. Sticking with Bryce, I'll move on to the Ed Foundation and La Fiesta and Alumni Association.
Yeah, Tammy, could you pull up the photos, please? So in September, we celebrated the fact that the foundation contributed, or La Fiesta rather, contributed nearly $340,000 to the foundation. This represented gifts from the 2020 gala and the 2021 gala. And the La Fiesta organization was able to do this and give even more than they had budgeted for in their plans in spite of the pandemic. So we really thank all the hardworking people at La Fiesta for their efforts in a really challenging environment. The next update I have is with regard solely to the Education Foundation. Mad for Plaid starts officially on October the 25th. You can go ahead and start giving now. You'll start to see the yard signs pop up about mid-October, so please give and please donate. And I think all of us understand how important the Education Foundation's campaign, Mad for Plaid campaign is. And that's in spite of the fact that we're seeking the 4 additional golden pennies. I mean, we still need these funds. So I hope the community recognizes that and we have a banner year.
Thank you, Bryce. I'll kick it back to Stacy Kelly for an update on PTA.
Well, I was happy to announce that we had our first luncheon that we've been able to have in quite some time that was not virtual. And I thought that it was extremely productive. There was a lot of discussion in terms of information that Dr. Trade provided on the start of the year. There was a short discussion on the VATRE and what was coming in terms of frequently asked questions. We made certain that our PTA presidents and president-elects were aware of the fact that as district, as board, as staff members, that we are information sources only in that. And then we spent some time discussing some operational issues that we were looking at together as a group that were impacting the PTAs. And as always, I cannot say enough thank yous to the women that donate so much of their time. It is truly like being the executive director of a nonprofit, because it is a nonprofit. And most nonprofits don't have somebody just be an executive director for 1 year, plus a learning year. So thank you all. You're all here every month, and we're grateful for you. So thank you very much. More to follow.
I couldn't agree more. I know I say it a lot, but I'll say it again. What the PTAs do, what La Fiesta does, what the community does to rally around, just makes a tremendous difference in us being able to do what we do throughout the year. And I'm super appreciative for the hours and hours and all the hard work that goes into that. So thank you. Many of y'all are here tonight, but some of them aren't. Maybe they're watching online. So thank you very much. I'll move over to Park City's Dad's Club. And dads also do a lot. I'll let Jay expound on that.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. This morning, early this morning, I had an unplanned and great spontaneous conversation over at Park City's Presbyterian with one of the leaders of Bradfield PTA. Dad's Club. He got me thinking PTA. Who was really excited about their drive toward engaging more fathers to be involved in Dad's Club, not only in what they do fundraising, but what they do for the communities at each school, and how they are really involved both with the families and the students. And the timing is great because each of the Dad's Clubs at every campus has just received the funds that they were able to raise through back to school sign up, and they're now working on programming for the year. Michael Denton is here. He's the head of the Central Dad's Club, known as Park City's Dad's Club, and we're thankful for Michael's leadership. One thing that I think is really important and will help drive additional participation from more fathers in the district is at the football game the first week of November. I can't remember if it's the 5th or the 6th, but it's a Friday. The leaders of each campus Dad's Club, November 5, the leaders of each campus Dad's Club, and I believe also the PTA, will be introduced at halftime for a large group of our community who attends those games to see. And I think it's important that we all, as board members, and as we're having conversations with parents in the schools, we just tell them about the great things the Dad's Club is doing in the PTA, and we encourage their participation because it's critical to helping us with our mission.
Thank you, Jay. Doug, would you mind reporting on CARE and HPRs?
Yeah, just a couple of
sports club also, sorry.
Yeah, just a couple of quick updates. So as we talked last meeting, CARE about 2 weeks ago had their annual CARE breakfast at the Dallas Country Club. Attendance was, they had over 250 people that attended. Their fundraising goal was 120,000 and they exceeded that goal. So it was by all measures a very successful event for CARE. Their guest speaker was a former HP mom that had lost her child, one of her children, through substance abuse, and she told her story, and it was very impactful to listen through. So, and then the honoree there, our honorary chair was our only Michaels, was honorary chair, and she and her husband were there. So it was a great breakfast. Park version performed, and it all came off really, really well. They are turning their attention to Red Ribbon Week, which will come up here in just a few short weeks. It's a national event of which we'll do local interpretations, but the theme this year is drug-free looks like me. So there'll be a series of number of events. There'll be red ribbons given out to K through 8 students. Student council will do visits into classrooms. The HP Middle School Drama Club is writing and performing a musical around the theme. So all of those events will get a lot more information about that, but that's what CARE will turn their attention to. And then they asked me to note that the annual art contest they do, which is normally in October, they're moving it to the spring. So we'll hear more about that. It's not canceled, it's just pushed into the spring. So that's CARE. Real quickly on the HPRs group, they met just 2 weeks ago. Much like you described, a lot of their funding comes from back to school sign up or from what they get through La Fiesta. They know now that they got $35,000, which was very generous from La Fiesta. So they will begin the process of hearing some of the teacher requests that are coming in. So I think at the note as of last meeting was they had a record number of requests that had begun to funnel in. I think the initial total was about $8,500 worth of requests. So they're in the process of working through that and figuring out which grants will come up. So there'll be more. Their meeting is on next meeting, November 2nd. So we'll get more information on what specific grants are being made, and I'll share that with everybody when it happens. And then quickly on sports club, no real report out, other than I had a breakfast meeting with their leadership and kind of talked through what some of their objectives were and some of their goals, and just made sure we're all tied in with that. So just kind of close that loop. So that's it.
Does anybody have any questions for any of the other trustees based on committee reports? I'll share one thing that I learned that you kind of jogged my memory when you talking about care. I was doing my training for the latest legislative session that was done virtually from someone from Region 10, and I didn't realize that the information on the back of the student ID cards that deals with suicide prevention, that was a recently enacted legislation that mandated that. That was not something we came up with. That was in response to legislation passed this summer. I missed that somehow this summer, so I just thought I should have. Maybe all of them did. And then the only other thing is, and Dr. Trick will probably report on this, but I do think that the band recently competed in Mckinney, and it seems like the momentum from 2 years ago has continued. So
I will defer that. I figured that's Dr.
I'll let
Trick's
you get to
territory.
it.
So that's
I'll
not.
just suffice to say, for those of you who enjoyed what happened a couple years ago, it looks like they're trying to do it again. I'll turn it over to Dr. Trigg for the superintendent report.
No pressure for the Highlander band, that's for sure. So, yes, I'm going to talk about that. I do have a rather lengthy report, and it's due to just the number of amazing things that your kids are doing and performing in various ways, academically, athletically, fine arts, and in just community service. So let me start by mentioning that October is National Principal Appreciation Month. I know I saw at least three of our principals here tonight, so thank you all for being here, and we do appreciate you more than you understand, and hopefully folks are letting you know that during the month of October. I've seen some of the signs and banners and whatever, so hopefully you'll be all taken care of. We're really, really appreciative of you. At the ball game last Friday night, UIL was here, and they presented the Lone Star Cup to Highland Park High School. That's the 12th time that we have won that competition, which is athletics, fine arts, and academics combined. That's more times than any other high school has won it in the history of the state of Texas, so we're really, really proud of all of our kids for that. This is kind of an interesting one, but I thought you might be interested in. As you know, during our lawn program and construction, we really tried to not just maintain the character of those facilities for the neighborhood, but to integrate into those designs features that were originally there. And I'm happy to announce that Higher Elementary now, the ornamental ironwork on the front that's been restored has now all been installed. Actually, we've got a picture. How about that? So I can't tell you how old that is, but whenever Higher was built, I mean, it's been there since, it's been restored, and it's been installed, and so we're really appreciative of the local company that helped us to do that, and John Lander and Levine for all of their work, being sure that important task was completed. VATRE, Edwards already mentioned that, just reinforced that Monday, October 18th is when early voting starts, and the election is actually November the 2nd. National Merit and National Scholar students. At our last meeting, I was able to mention that the next day we'd be making the announcement of who those kids were, and so this is about a month old, but we haven't had a chance in a public meeting to mention that we have 14 National Merit semifinalists, we have 14 National Hispanic Recognition Program Scholars, 2 National African American Recognition Program Scholars, 1 National Indigenous Recognition Program Scholars, and 28 National Merit Commended students. So congratulations to all those students. Jeremy Gilbert mentioned to me that I believe tomorrow is the PSAT.
Yes, sir.
And so the kids that are taking that are juniors tomorrow, hopefully we'll be announcing a number of them next year at this time, and congratulating them on their success. Advanced placement exams, there's a report for you tonight in your packet. The thing I would point out is that we have over 3,189 AP exams administered, which is absolutely amazing, because if you remember during the pandemic, it was just up and down. When were we going to be able to do those? Some were virtual, some were in person. It was really a cumbersome process, but we had the percentage of seniors who scored a 3 or higher went from 78% to 84%. So we're really, really proud of those kids. I've got numbers here, but you can read that in the report. SAT scores are in. SAT average score 1296. That's up from 1281 last year. We're really proud of those kids. I should mention that we did have fewer students take it this year than we did last year than we did the year before. I think once again that's due to the fact that a number of college admissions now are not based on SAT and ACT scores, plus the fact that it was just difficult to get to the testing sites and all of that. Now, Highlander Band. I'll skip some of this preliminary information, but absolutely Tom Sharp is correct. At the Mckinney Marching Band Invitational, we were in first place overall in the finals. We're named grand champions, and also we had best color guard, best percussion, best music, best visual. I don't know if there's anything else we weren't best at, so congratulations. And we're really proud of them, along with our drumline who won, who did really, really well at the HEB drumline contest back in earlier September. Scott, tennis. Bryce, have you heard anything officially? I'm assuming we're by-district champs, but
We are officially. I apologize. I looked at my text at the beginning of your remarks to see if I could say that. But yes, as of about 5:45, we're by district champs.
all right. So by-district champs. We prior to that we were 10-1, 7-0 in the district. Really looking forward to a deep run into the state playoffs, state championships this year with our team. Tennis, volleyball ranked number 1 in 5A. Ranked number 18 in the country, according to the ABCA USA Today polls. We're really, really proud of those young ladies and their coaches. They're 29 and 5 overall, 9 and 0 in the district. If you attended the football game last Friday night, obviously we're victorious. We're on the record of 5 and 1, 2 and 0 in the district. This week they'll be playing Mckinney North, I believe, up in Mckinney. Hopefully they can do as well as Bankstown, probably on that same field. Cross country, the girls placed second in the varsity girls division at the Jesuit Cross Country Classic held on October 2nd. Girls varsity golf team placed 10th, but they were the second best 5A team in their Swing for a Cure tournament. And the varsity 2 team actually won their tournament at Woodbridge Golf Course. Excited about them. Boys golf team finished first and third. The 2 varsity teams in their most recent competition as well. Consent agenda. Just let me mention the high school and the middle school and intermediate school PTAs and their gifts. Point that out. The high school PTA gift tonight was over $800,000, and the middle school intermediate school was over $940,000. So PTA folks, thank you for just all you do. I mean, I just can't say enough. Reinforce what Stacey had to say, but wanted to point those 2 things out in case you had not had a chance to notice that. Consent agenda, 3 proclamations. I want to be sure you're aware of. Assistive Technology Specialist Month is November. Education Support Professionals Day is November 17th, and National School Psychology Awareness Week is November 8th through the 12th. So there's 3 proclamations. That concludes my report.
Do we have a recommendation from the superintendent?
Yes, the administration recommends approval of the consent agenda as published.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move the Board of Trustees approves the consent agenda for October 12th regular meeting as published.
In a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We'll move on to the next item. I just thought it'd be helpful. I know there's been quite a bit of work that's been done by several individuals on just trying to answer some of the questions that have come up related to the VATRE. It's not something that I think this district has done. We had the bond back in 2015, but we haven't had a VATRE for a tax election. I don't think this since 2000 or later. I mean, if we did it, it was a long time ago. So, in the midst of having conversations, some things come up. So I thought it'd just be helpful. Maybe Mary Jane and Edward, you can maybe just share with the rest of the trustees some of the. I know y'all, a lot of questions have been directed toward us too, y'all. So I just thought it'd be helpful. We don't spend a ton of time on this, but I thought it'd be helpful.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll start with it. The whole concept here is to make sure we're compiling, as any of us and all of us continue and administration get questions on the facts that underlie what a VATRE is. not many folks know what that acronym is, and so we're doing our best to try to make sure we're keeping track of the questions and being thorough in the responses. And so I thought it was a good idea to make sure we compile answers to something like 25 plus questions that are now listed on the website. They're very helpful. They cover topics such as obviously the timing and the procedure and the kind of the protocol of what this is. They cover certain components of House Bill 3 and the implications on our district. They try to do a good job of explaining in further detail what a golden penny is and what we are likely to do with it from a use of proceeds perspective. They also go into a number of financial and budget metrics. You know, all the benchmarking that we've done from a finance committee perspective, a lot of that's highlighted here and expounded upon in further detail. And I think, you know, in particular, the discussion around the implications in the finance is something we wanted to make sure that we shared as we've done a tremendous amount of work on this. So it's out there. I'd like to highlight one arcane topic here, which is what is the ballot actually going to say? And this is a little bit of a torturous exercise, but bear with me because I want everybody to understand why it reads the way it reads. And I'll highlight this by saying it is specified legal language that is required by the state when you go and put forward to the public a VATRE election. So this is literally formulaic language. But I'm going to read the language and I'll go into a little bit of a kind of a description of why it says what it says. So the language says, Highland Park ISD Proposition A, ratifying the ad valorem tax rate of $1.131 in Highland Park ISD for the current year, a rate that will result in an increase of 3.45% in maintenance and operation tax revenue for the district for the current period as compared with the preceding year, which is an additional $5,273,741. That's literally what this thing is going to read like. Now, what we wanted to do for everybody in attendance today, but also as posted on the FAQ, is to explain why is it the $5.3 million versus what we've alluded to on occasion, which is the pennies are actually worth 6.6, net to us 3.6. That's kind of complicated, but there is a way to triangulate that. So what we have happening this year is property tax, appraised tax values are going up about 3% for our district. So the value of the real estate in mass, net of exemptions, et cetera, is going up about 3%. We have an implied compressed tax rate that's going down 3.7% as a result of that. And this is all net of recapture. This is bottom line dollars to the district. So we got property tax going up, otherwise down tax rate of 3.7% plus the pennies. That's the calculation. So the pennies are worth $6.6 million before the transition grant, 6.6, that's what we had talked about. But the combination of property tax, property values going up and property tax rate going down nets us down $1.3 million net of recapture. So it's 6.6 minus 1.3 equals the 5.3 pro forma adjustment. So that's where it comes from. We wanted to make sure everybody triangulated what we talked about is 6.6 in the pennies, and then just the combination of tax rate and appraised values slammed together to have us down $1.3 million versus last year, some of which is 5.3, which happens to be a 3.45% increase in M&O revenues.
As
A
compared
lot of data, but it's all on the website. Wanted to make sure no one was confused as they look to make a vote one way or the other.
So just to restate, when we talk about 6.6 gross, that's compared to having the pennies versus not, and we talk about the fact that's really 3.6 net of the formula transition grant, which gets reduced dollar per dollar. And then we've also said that it's about a 500,000 equates to approximately 1% increase in compensation across the board. So that's where the 7% compensation increase comes from.
You got it. And again, it's all tied to what moves up and what moves down net net, and then plus the pennies. And transition grant as it relates to this formula or this language is not considered. So it's not part of the consideration. So that's how we ended up with the language we ended up with. Mary Jane, there's a lot of other really good content in there. You want to mention anything else you think is useful to just highlight?
Yes, I'll just clarify I think it's helpful to remember that compression is really state mandated. And so when we were talking about those factors that we're putting into that budget, into that formula, that's really state directed. And then we, as a district, get to choose to add the additional 4 pennies on top of it. I will just say for fellow board members, I know several of you each have been in different meetings with different groups of people hearing questions, but I have gotten to go to all of the PTA meetings at each campus, as well as some parent coffees. And the questions I'm hearing the most of, I think I just want to clarify to you guys, so you know him also, is one, a little bit of the explanation of that transition grant seems to get lost in translation when we're explaining it. And so I do want to point out that frequently asked question page has a clear explanation of how that works. I also I think one thing that people get hung up on is this idea that the golden pennies are just for 1 year, and just to really emphasize with people that it is into perpetuity. There's a question on that as well, or until such time that the state legislature changes their formula calculation. And so this additional revenue we get will last until we have a change from the legislature. So each year going forward, we will have that additional $3.6 million that can grow as our property values grow. And I think that's important to recognize that is something that we as a board could be looking at, but in explaining it to people, this is something that's long-term, not just this year additional revenue. I think there's also a question I want to point out, or two, is we've gotten questions about how our revenues have gone up and why have our salaries not been able to go up. And if we've kind of dug into that to get great numbers, I think that are helpful to explain the fact that yes, our total revenues have gone up as our property values have gone up, but the numbers we keep after recapture have not followed that same trajectory. So our net revenue that we've been able to keep post recapture has gone up around 4.3% over the since 2016, and during that same time period, our staff compensation has been able to go up about approximately 6%. And so that number, though, has not been able to keep up with what other districts have been able to do around us, and that's why we're not able to stay competitive, because they've increased in greater percentages. And I also think there's great data looking at how our staffing compares to other districts, and it breaks it down into categories of administrative staffing, support staffing, teacher staffing, and again, we look very lean when we look at our peer districts. So I encourage you, if you get those type of questions, there's good questions in there with answers that I think elaborate on each of those points. I think that's it.
Thanks, Mary Jane. I'll add one other anecdotal that Dr. Trigg shared. One of the questions that came up, I think in one of those coffees or roundtables, somebody asked, "Hey, what about?" They picked a school that's single. I think it was a Colleyville or Capel. They said, "Hey, Capel's another single high school district, and they rank much more towards the middle of that chart of those 25 area schools. How are they able to pay so much more?" Dr. Trigg did some, or maybe it was Chase. Somebody did some digging and identified that they had actually accessed all the golden pennies available to them long before House Bill 3 came out. Was it 8 or 10 years ago?
Yeah, I would mention not just golden pennies, but a total of 13 pennies, some of which were golden, a lot of which were copper.
And so we did not do additional research talking to those trustees, but the expectation is they looked at the math and they said, hey, it's worth it to raise these extra M&O dollars, but their recapture rate in the end were close to what ours is. So ours would be, on our incremental, would be close to 80%, average about 66. And I don't know exactly what theirs are, but it's much less. So I think the the conclusion I drew with help from Dr. Trigg was that they made that decision because it wasn't nearly as punitive to them on a relative basis. So anyways, I thought that was an interesting answer to, I thought a good question that was out there.
Can I get clarification on
Yeah.
that real quick, Tom? Basically, so they had golden pennies, but they also did a VATRE, or was it because, can you just, I mean, because my friends that live in Capel, I got the impression that they, a number of years ago, voted and had a VRTA that was worth about 8 pennies, if I'm not, maybe not that many, but.
No, actually, it's worth 13 pennies.
Oh, 13.
Prior to HB3, you were allowed to go to your voters for a TRE, and that TRE could be up to 13 additional pennies. Property wealthy districts like Highland Park, in my opinion, were disadvantaged because it would be much more difficult to go to the voters in HPISD and ask for 13 additional pennies, and also having to say at a minimum 2/3 of that's going to go to the state, and at the maximum 80% is going to go to the state. Where other districts that are not as property wealthy had the opportunity to go to their taxpayers and levy and ask if it was okay to levy up to 13 pennies, or maybe only 10% was going to go to the state, and in some cases 0 if they were non-recapture districts. So you just had different dynamics working, and this goes all the way back to 2010 or even prior. And you'll see the vast majority of districts that are on our chart that are paying higher salaries than us, have gone at least for a portion of those 13, and in some cases all 13 of those additional pennies.
Tom, and just to mention, that's one of the reasons that we're so fortunate in our community to have the lowest tax rate of those in Dallas County. It's also because we don't have, per student, we don't have as much debt for capital projects in the past, but
Yeah.
a lot of it's that M&O tax rate is substantially lower here than other districts.
And look, a lot of that's also because the average property value here, the average home here is much higher, so 1 penny raises more money towards CapEx and what we call the interest and sinking fund. So there are a lot of factors that weigh into that. So I just thought it was interesting because a question that I've gotten several times is, how did we get here? I thought we were always sort of middle of the pack, and that helps. That was very helpful, so I appreciate your research on that. And I would just, as long as we're throwing kudos, I know John DeLambert's worked a lot on this. Tammy, I believe you've worked a lot on this. I know Chase has worked a lot on this. Mike has worked, a lot of people have worked really hard to try to put this information in a way that is easily consumed by the public on something that is normally just not something, in an area that we don't normally all spend a lot of time thinking about. So, thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions about that? All right, I'll move on. Just for information only, there's several reports that are in your packet. I'll mention their AP results, EF local and HPHS literacy selection process report, elementary class size report, ESL annual report, enrollment report, financial report, National Merit Scholarship recognitions, SAT results, and a list of Texas Public Information Act reports, requests and reports. So those are all included for your information. And I'm pleased to announce that we do not have any items on the agenda for closed session. So I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn the board meeting of October the 12th, 2021.
Do I have a second?
Well done, second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I hope you have a wonderful week.